They said the playground was for everyone, but Ethan Williams knew better. The wooden bench by the oak tree might as well have had his name on it. Ethan's Island. Population, 1. He kept his backpack on his lap the way some kids hug a teddy bear. Fingers locked around the strap as if the polyester could shield him from glances. That turned into whispers. Whispers that turned into jokes with sharp edges. 6 years old and already fluent in silence. He stared at the scuffed toes of his shoes and timed his breaths with the squeak of monkey bars. "Why are you sitting here all alone?" The voice was small, but sure, like a knock that expects the door to open. Ethan looked up. A girl stood in front of him, tiny, weary, with braids tied in mismatched elastics. Dust powdered her sneakers as if she'd been racing the wind. Her eyes, dark and bright at the same time, caught the sun the way puddles catch sky. She didn't blink away from his prosthetic. She saw it, took it in, and then looked back at his face. "I'm Zara," she said. "You look like you could use a teammate." Ethan felt that pause he always felt right before a joke aimed at him like a spitball. They don't want me there," he said carefully, as if the words themselves might shatter on his tongue. "It's fine. I like quiet. Quiet's good for naps," Zara said. "Not for recess." Before he could answer, the air shifted. 3 boys wandered over in a loose triangle, the kind of walk that said they owned the grass. One had a milk carton, already crushed in the middle like it had been strangled. Another dragged his heel through the mulch in slow, showy lines. The tallest wore a smirk that didn't need a reason. Well, the tall one said. "Robot boy found a. Who even are you?" "Zara," she replied, standing taller by a fraction without moving her feet. The boy's smirk stretched. "Zara, cute, look, the one-legged tin kid and a thrift store princess. What a pair. Try not to scratch the bench, yeah?" A laugh burst from the second boy, too loud, too eager. Ethan pulled his backpack higher. He knew the song. Verse 1, the limb. Verse 2, the money. Verse 3, whatever they decided Zara was. "That's not funny," Zara said. Her voice cut clean. "You don't get to talk to him like that." The boys blinked. For a second, their routine snagged. The tallest recovered first. "Or what? You gonna cry at us? Wave your discount braids around?" Zara's chin lifted. "Or I'll tell Ms. Carter you're throwing food again. And my grandma. She knows how to make people listen." Ethan's heartbeat thudded in his ears. Usually this was where he shrank smaller, and the bullies grew larger. Usually someone looked at his leg the way people stare at a broken toy, curious, a little delighted by the damage. But the way Zara said it like a fact, not a threat, made the space around them shift. Kids on the swing slowed their pumping legs. The metal chains clicked like a clock counting down. The second boy flicked his sandwich crumbs at Ethan's shirt. Tiny dots clung to the cotton like fleas. The third boy balled a napkin and lobbed it, a perfect arc that thumped against Ethan's shoulder. The tall one lifted a palmful of mulch, letting it rain through his fingers as if testing the weight of the next move. "You should leave," Zara said, "before you do something uglier than your words." He barked a laugh, but it sounded thinner. "Look at you. Bodyguard now? For him." His chin jerked toward Ethan's prosthetic. "He can't even run. How's that a team?" Zara didn't look away. "He's already stronger than you," she said. "He shows up every day." Ethan felt the words land inside his chest like a pebble in a pond small. And yet everything rippled. He didn't know how to be the boy in that sentence. Not with 3 shadows looming and his throat tight. But Zara stood anchored, and somehow, just for a moment, it felt possible. A whistle blew. Ms. Carter's voice carried from the blacktop where a hopscotch grid had half its numbers rubbed off. "Line up, 5th period." The boys glanced toward the sound. The tall one flicked his chin. "Later, robot." He turned, tossing the last of the mulch back into the bed as if he had done the world a favor. The others followed. The dust settled. Zara turned to Ethan with a grin wide enough to be reckless. "Come on," she said. "Let's not give them the bench as a trophy." He didn't move. It wasn't fear this time. It was the strange gravity of being chosen. Why did you do that?" he asked. His voice wobbled, then steadied. "People don't. Usually," she shrugged, as if bravery were something she kept in her pocket next to a rubber band and a marble. "Because it was wrong," she said. "And because I think we could be friends. I'm good at picking teams, She peered at his leg again, not with pity, but with curiosity, as if it were a puzzle she intended to solve. Does it hurt? Sometimes, he said. They say that's normal. Normal doesn't mean right, Zara said. The bell clanged again, louder. Closer, relentless. Kids poured toward lines marked with teacher names on laminated cards. Ethan stood, balancing the way he'd been taught, careful and cautious. His prosthetic clicked softly against the walkway. He hated that sound, the way it announced him. He hated the way adults said brave like it was a consolation prize. The way kids said it like an accusation. Zara matched his pace without staring at his gait. What's your name? Ethan. Okay, Ethan. Welcome to a two-person team. She extended her hand with solemnity, the way grown-ups do when they formalize things in suits. He shook it, and the corners of her mouth pulled up. They walked to the line for Ms. Carter's class. A few kids glanced over curiosity, without the cruelty this time. Or maybe he only noticed the difference, because Zara stood there like she'd always stood there. Ms. Carter scanned the line and gave a brisk nod. Shoes forward, mouths quiet, she said. We are scholars and athletes, not stampeding ducks, the class snickered. Ethan almost smiled. It felt illegal, like giggling in church. Inside. The classroom smelled like markers and pencil shavings. The alphabet marched along the wall in bright blocks. A for apple, B for ball, on the bulletin board. A banner read "You belong here" in cut-out letters, and underneath, self-portraits made with stubby crayons showed every shade and shape a 6-year-old can imagine. Ethan slid into his seat. Zara took the desk beside him without asking if it was taken. Hi, neighbors, she whispered, as if the two of them had just rented a tiny apartment in the land of second grade. Math came first, then reading. He kept losing his place. The stories on the page wouldn't stick. His mind kept replaying the scene outside, Zara's voice cutting sharp and clear. The way the tall boy's smirk dipped for a heartbeat. In his peripheral vision, he could see Zara's braids bob when she sounded out tricky words. See how her pencil moved fast, confident loops and lines, then quick erases, then firmer lines. She found answers like she expected them to be there. When the lunch bell rang, stomachs roared across the room like tiny motors. The hallway to the cafeteria was a river, and Ethan loathed rivers. He held his tray like a fragile raft. The prosthetic always stiffened after he sat too long. Those first steps could be a stumble disguised as a stride. He took it slow, lined with all his old rules. Don't look down, don't look up. Don't let them see you strategize. Someone stuck out a foot. The tray tilted. Milk slid to the edge, hovered, then leaped. A white splash kissed his shoes and freckled the floor. Laughter rose, shocked and hungry. The tall boy's voice landed like a stamp. Watch it, one leg. Ethan's face burned. He stared at the mess like it might rearrange itself into order if he concentrated hard enough. Zara slammed her tray down on the nearest table. The clatter sliced the noise. Heads turned. She stepped between Ethan and the tall boy, tiny and immovable. He's not your target, she said. He's a kid trying to carry lunch. The boy lifted his palms, theatrical innocence. Just having fun. Fun is a jump rope, Zara said. This is cowardly. A hush pooled around them. Even the lunch ladies slowed, ladles hovering over spaghetti like paused comets. For a stretched second, the cafeteria was a photograph. Then Ms. Carter's voice, calm but iron, threaded through the air. Everything all right over here? The tall boy's smile cracked into something meaner, then retreated. Fine, he muttered, already drifting back to his table. The river started moving again. Zara grabbed napkins and crouched. Ethan dropped to a knee, his real one, and together they chased milk into soft heaps and tossed them into the bin. When it was done, she pushed his tray toward him. Sit with me, she said. Two-person team rules. They ate under a banner that said kind is cool in letters punched out of glitter paper. His chicken nuggets were lukewarm. Her sandwich looked like it had fought the plastic wrap and lost. And somehow it felt like a feast. Does it hurt now? She asked, nodding toward his leg. A little, he admitted. They say I'll get used to it. Don't, Zara said. Get better. That's different. He looked at her, at the stubborn line of her mouth, at the fleck of mustard near her lip she hadn't noticed, and something new rooted itself under his ribs, something that felt almost like hope. only sturdier, like a beam laid across a post's dot in the afternoon. The sky turned the pale silver that means rain is thinking about it. Recess came again anyway, because second grade is generous like that. They didn't go to the bench. They went to the swings. Zara pumped high almost immediately, hair snapping like flags. Ethan went slow, careful, but he went. Each creak of the chain sounded less like a warning and more like a rhythm his body could learn. When the final bell released the day, the parking lot glittered with cars that cost too much, and parents with phones attached to their palms. A black SUV idled by the curb his ride, always on time, always the same. He hesitated. Double quotes, see you tomorrow? Zara asked. Maybe, he said, which was Ethan for definitely. He wanted to say the other thing too, the thing that had been echoing since morning. Thank you. He tried it out, quiet. Thank you. Zara shrugged again, and this time the shrug looked like a promise. Two-person team, she said. Tomorrow we take the slide. She leaned in, conspiratorial. And when they talk, let them. We'll be busy. He climbed into the SUV. The door thumped shut, sealing in leather smell and conditioned air. As the car rolled forward, he watched Zara in the side window, tiny, fierce, waving like a flag. The bench under the oak got smaller, then vanished. He didn't miss it. Not at all. The Williams estate stood like a fortress of glass and stone on the edge of Boston's wealthiest suburb. Its lawn was the kind of green you only see in magazines trimmed with military precision, sprinkled with flowers chosen by someone who thought about aesthetics instead of scent. Inside, chandeliers glittered like captured stars, and silence was as thick as velvet. Ethan always thought the house looked proud. He also thought it looked lonely. Dinner was served at exactly 6 o'clock. Always 6. The long mahogany table stretched like a polished runway down the dining room, lined with more chairs than the family could ever fill. At one end sat Richard Williams, Ethan's father, CEO, philanthropist, a man whose tie never loosened until after dessert. At the other end sat Victoria, Ethan's stepmother, elegant as a portrait, lips painted crimson like a warning. Between them sat Ethan, a boy dwarfed by gold cutlery and plates too big for his portions. Tonight's menu, filet mignon for Richard, salmon in lemon butter for Victoria, and grilled chicken with broccoli for Ethan. Balanced, Victoria called it. Bland, Ethan thought. His fork poked at the broccoli like it might bite back. Quiet again, Victoria observed, her smile thin as glass. Something happened at school? Ethan shook his head. Words stuck in his throat. He thought of Zara, how her voice had cut through laughter like a shield. How she'd said normal doesn't mean right. He wanted to tell his dad about her, about the milk spill, about the way the cafeteria had gone silent when she slammed her tray. But Richard was already half buried in emails, his phone glowing against the candlelight. Victoria's eyes, sharp as needles, dared him to say something she could twist. No, ma'am. He muttered. Just tired. Richard glanced up briefly, brow furrowing. You sure, champ? Ethan nodded, though his chest buzzed with unspoken truth. The conversation drifted back to stock prices and charity galas. He chewed in silence, broccoli turning to paste. The next day at school, silence wasn't an option. The cafeteria smelled like pizza boats and sour milk. Students lined up, trays clattering, voices bouncing off walls. Ethan gripped his own tray milk carton, sandwich, apple, carrots. His prosthetic squeaked with every step. Zara walked beside him, humming under her breath, careless to the swarm of eyes. Halfway to their table, it happened. A foot darted out, quick as a snake. Ethan stumbled. His tray tilted, and milk burst across the tile, splashing his shoes, dripping down his pants. The laughter came instantly, loud and greedy. Watch it, one leg, the tall boy jeered, voice sharp enough to cut. He jabbed a thumb toward Zara. Better let your girlfriend carry it for you. Oh wait, who'd want a black girl for a girlfriend? The cafeteria froze. Even the clatter of trays seemed to pause midair. Ethan's face burned so hot he thought the skin might peel. His prosthetic felt heavier than his entire body. He wanted to vanish into the floor, to shrink until no one could see him. Zara didn't shrink. She slammed her tray onto the table so hard the sound cracked through the silence. Milk cartons wobbled, forks clinked. Every head turned. You don't get to say that, she snapped, eyes blazing. Not to him, not to me. Not ever, the tall boy sneered. What are you gonna do about it? Tell Ms. Carter, Zara shot back. And my grandma. And guess what? People listened to her. Her voice rose, fierce and unwavering. Everyone here can see how ugly you sound. Murmurs rippled through the cafeteria. Some kids stared at the floor. Others watched with wide eyes, waiting for the explosion. The tall boy's smirk faltered for just a moment, but pride forced it back into place. He scoffed, muttered something to his friends, and retreated to their corner table. The silence broke. Conversations resumed, forks scraped plates. Laughter scattered but softer now, less certain. Ethan stood frozen in the middle of it all, milk dripping from his sneaker. Zara grabbed napkins, crouched down, and began blotting the floor. "Help me," she said without looking up. Her tone wasn't pity. It was partnership. Ethan knelt, his good knee pressing into the tile, his hands clumsy but willing. Together they cleaned, tossed the mess, and carried their trays to the table under the banner that read "Kind is cool." Lunch tasted different that day. Ethan's sandwich was soggy round the edges. But when Zara tore her own sandwich in half and shoved the bigger piece toward him, it felt like a feast. He chewed slowly, staring at the girl who had faced down 3 bullies twice her size without blinking. "Why did you do that?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. Zara wiped crumbs from her chin. "Because it was wrong. And because..." She grinned, gap-toothed and fearless. "I told you. We're a 2-person team." Ethan's chest tightened, not with shame this time, but with something heavier, stronger. A weight that felt like it could anchor him instead of drown him. For the first time in forever, the cafeteria didn't feel like enemy territory. With Zara beside him, it almost felt like home. That evening, back at the estate, dinner was the same as always: steak, salmon, chicken. But when Victoria asked, "Any friends at school yet?" Ethan didn't hesitate this time. "Yes," he said quietly. "Her name's Zara." The fork paused halfway to Victoria's mouth. Her lips twitched into something that might have been a smile or a warning. Richard looked up from his phone. "Zara, that's great, champ. What's she like?" Ethan thought of milk dripping on his shoes, of Zara's voice sharp as a blade, of her grin that dared him to believe in himself. He swallowed. "She's brave." Victoria's eyes narrowed, but Richard smiled. "Sounds like a good teammate." Ethan nodded, holding onto that word. Teammate. And for the first time, the food didn't taste like cardboard. The neighborhood where Zara lived didn't look anything like Ethan's. Gone were the iron gates and manicured hedges. Instead, narrow streets bent like elbows around rows of rust-colored apartment blocks and weathered trailers, with curtains faded from the sun. Where the Williams estate whispered with silence, this place buzzed kids yelling over cracked basketball courts, radios spilling old R&B through half-open windows, the smell of fried chicken and engine oil drifting in the same breeze. Ethan's SUV should have stuck out like a spaceship, but that day it simply parked at the corner, driver tapping impatient fingers on the wheel. Zara tugged Ethan's hand. "Come on," she said. "You have to meet Grandma." They darted down a gravel path between trailers, weeds sprouting stubborn and tall. At the far end stood a small white trailer patched with tin siding, flower pots hanging crookedly by the door. A painted sign read "Welcome," though the E had nearly peeled away. Zara pushed the door open without knocking. Inside smelled of soap and cornbread. "Grandma, this is Ethan," Zara announced proudly. "The teammate I told you about." From the kitchen emerged Zara Johnson. She was tall, her hair silver but coiled strong, eyes sharp in a way that made you sit straighter. She wore a faded nurse's scrubs top, though she'd long since retired. Her hands broad, lined, steady, looked like they had held both newborns and dying men without shaking. "Well," Rosa said, wiping her palms on a dish towel, "so this is the boy I've heard about." Ethan shifted, clutching his backpack strap the way he always did when words got stuck. "Ma'am," he mumbled. "MMHM." Rose's gaze dropped to his prosthetic, the shiny metal peeking beneath his uniform pants. "Hurts, doesn't it?" Ethan blinked. "How did you?" "I see the way you stand. Too stiff." Whoever fitted that leg didn't think about a boy your age, just measurements on a chart. She crouched, level with him, Her hands hovered, not touching until he gave the smallest nod. Then she pressed gently at the joint, adjusted the strap with quick fingers. See, that's digging into muscle that should be growing. No wonder it aches. No doctor, no nurse, no specialist had ever said it so plain. Ethan's throat tightened. They told me it was normal. Normal doesn't mean right, Rosa said, echoing her granddaughter. She glanced up at him. You deserve better than pain. Zara beamed. Told you Grandma knows everything. The trailer's living room was small to couches patched with blankets, a coffee table scarred with rings from too many mugs. But when Rosa cleared a space, it felt like a clinic built from love instead of marble. She showed Ethan stretches, guiding him to flex the muscles around his thigh, teaching him balance tricks with a broomstick. Zara clapped whenever he managed to steady steps without wobbling. You're stronger than you think, Rosa told him. The trick is not pretending you're fine. The trick is training until fine turns to strong. For the first time, Ethan's prosthetic didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like a challenge he could meet. That night, as the SUV hummed him back to his mansion, Ethan stared at the darkened window. Reflections of street lamps slid across the glass like falling stars. He thought about Rosa's hands adjusting his strap, about Zara grinning when he walked steadier. He thought about the way their tiny trailer had felt warmer than the entire Williams estate. Inside the mansion, dinner waited like a ritual. Victoria's gaze darted to his leg the moment he entered. How was school? She asked sweetly. Slicing her salmon with precision, Ethan hesitated. His chest swelled with words. I met Zara's grandma. She fixed my leg. It feels better. But Richard was absorbed in emails again, and Victoria's smile felt like a trap. Fine, he said, stabbing broccoli with his fork. But deep inside, something new had planted itself small, stubborn, like the weeds growing through Zara's gravel path, a seed of truth that whispered, you don't have to live in pain. You don't have to be alone. The next afternoon, Ethan didn't go straight to the bench. He found Zara by the swings. Can I come over again? He asked. Zara's grin was answer enough. Two-person team. Of course you can. That evening, Rosa guided him again, patient but firm. She showed him how to walk in a straight line, heel to toe. Then how to stand with both feet planted wide and steady. Balance, she said, isn't just legs. It's heart and head too. Ethan's legs trembled, but his chest felt lighter. For the first time, he smiled while standing on his prosthetic. Zara clapped, jumping so high her braids bounced. See? You're unstoppable. He laughed a sound so rare it startled even him. Maybe with you around, he admitted. Rosa watched, quiet pride flickering in her eyes. You've got fight in you, boy. Don't let anyone tell you different. That night, in bed under silk sheets that smelled like lavender detergent, Ethan whispered into the dark, normal doesn't mean right. The phrase echoed until it felt like armor. He clutched his toy wrench's secret talisman and for once, sleep came without the sting of shame. The next morning dawned gray over Boston, the kind of sky that felt heavy even before rain came. Ethan dragged his backpack across the marble floor of the estate, each click of his prosthetic echoing loudly in the cavernous hallway. Zara's words and Rosa's steady hands still lingered in his mind. Normal doesn't mean right. You deserve better than pain. He wanted to believe it. Needed to. That evening, Richard sat in his study, papers spread across a desk the size of a small boat. The smell of leather and ink clung to the air. Ethan lingered in the doorway, clutching the straps of his backpack so tightly the nylon bit into his palms. Dad, his voice was small. Richard looked up, glasses sliding down his nose. A rare smile softened the sharpness of his features. Hey, champ, comin'. Ethan shuffled forward. Each step was a quiet rebellion, the click of his prosthetic against polished wood, the courage trembling but growing. I need to tell you something. Richard leaned back in his chair, giving him space. Go on. Ethan's chest tightened, but the words spilled anyway. My leg. It hurts all the time. They keep saying it's normal, but it doesn't feel right. Zara's grandma, she used to be a nurse. She looked at it. She said it's not fitted right. She showed me exercises, and it feels better. Different. Like I can actually stand. Richard's brows drew together. Zara's grandma. Yes, sir. Her name's Rosa. She listened. Ethan's throat wavered. Dad, I think the doctor's mom Victoria chose aren't helping. Maybe they're even making it worse. The words dropped into the silence like stones into deep water. Behind them, the door creaked. Victoria stood in the doorway, heels clicking against the hardwood like a warning. Her smile was tight, sharp. "And what nonsense is this?" Ethan froze. Richard's gaze flicked to his wife. "He's telling me how he feels. That his leg still hurts." Victoria stepped inside, her perfume flooding the room like smoke. "Children exaggerate. Pain builds character. The best specialists in Boston are treating him. And now some woman in a trailer thinks she knows better." Her voice dripped contempt. "Trailer," as if the word itself was dirt. Ethan's hands balled into fists. "She does know better." He blurted. "She made it stop hurting." Victoria's eyes narrowed to slits. "Watch your tone." "Young man," Richard straightened, his jaw tightening. "If Ethan says it feels wrong, then we get another opinion. End of story." For a moment, Victoria's mask cracked, something flickering across her face. Panic. Maybe anger, but then the smile snapped back, colder than before. "Do as you wish, Richard. But don't waste money chasing fairy tales from the other side of town." She swept out, her heels biting into the hallway until the sound vanished. Ethan's chest heaved. He expected anger, dismissal, punishment. Instead, Richard rose from behind the desk and crouched to his son's level, his hand resting gently on Ethan's shoulder. "You did good, champ. Speaking up takes guts." Ethan blinked hard against tears. "What if she gets mad?" "She already is," Richard admitted, lips curling in a weary smile. "But that's not your problem. Your job is to be honest." "My job is to protect you." For the first time, Ethan believed it. The next day, secrecy wrapped itself around him like a cloak. After school, instead of going straight home, Richard instructed the driver to take a different route. The SUV wound through busy streets until it stopped outside a small clinic tucked between a bakery and a laundromat. No marble columns, no grand entrance, just a glass door with peeling paint and a sign that read Dr. Hernandez, orthopedic specialist. Inside, the waiting room smelled of disinfectant and warm bread drifting in from next door. No chandelier, no fountain, just magazines with dog-eared pages and a receptionist who offered Ethan a smile. Instead of a clipboard, Dr. Hernandez, a man with kind eyes and sleeves rolled to his elbows, examined the prosthetic carefully. He adjusted straps, tapped joints, measured angles. "This was fitted to tight," he said, voice steady. "It's causing strain on muscles that should be growing freely. Long term, it could do serious harm." Richard's jaw clenched. Ethan's heart pounded. Rosa had been right. Zara had been right. "Can you fix it?" Richard asked. "Yes, with adjustments, exercises, and patience. He'll be stronger in weeks." Ethan grinned, something breaking open inside him. For the first time in years, hope felt real. That night, back at the mansion, Victoria's eyes sliced through him across the dinner table. Her smile was gone, replaced with a quiet fury. "Did you enjoy your little adventure?" she asked. Voice sweet as poison. Ethan lowered his gaze, but his chest was steady. "Yes, ma'am. My leg feels better." Richard set his fork down deliberately, his tone iron. "And that's all that matters." Victoria's knife clinked against porcelain, the sound sharper than any word. Ethan swallowed, but deep inside, he felt it, the beginning of resistance. For once, he wasn't shrinking. For once, he had truth on his side. The rain came in sheets that night, slashing against the tall windows of the Williams estate. Thunder rolled like drums in a war Ethan hadn't known he was part of until now. The house always felt too big, but tonight the walls seemed to lean in, listening, waiting. Richard had called an emergency family meeting in the dining room. Not in his study, not behind closed doors, but in the space where secrets echoed loudest. Victoria sat poised at the far end of the mahogany table, her crimson lips painted into a smile that didn't touch her eyes. "So," she said smoothly, "what's this about dragging us away from dinner plans?" Richard's voice was quiet, but it cut through the room. Dr. Hernandez confirmed what Ethan's been saying. The prosthetic was fitted wrong. It's been hurting him every day. For a heartbeat, silence pressed against Ethan's ears. Then Victoria laughed a brittle, tinkling sound like glass cracking. Ridiculous. That so-called doctor probably runs his practice out of a broom closet. We've had the best specialists in the city. The best. Richard's hand slammed against the table. Candles flickered. The best wouldn't let my son suffer. Either they were incompetent or you've been lying to me. Victoria's mask slipped for just a second. Her knuckles whitened on the knife at her plate. Then she set it down delicately and leaned back, composure snapping back into place. Lying? To what end, Richard? Control, money, that's absurd. Ethan's breath caught. He wanted to shrink into the wood, but Rose's words burned in his chest. Don't let them make you feel smaller. His fists clenched beneath the table. It hurts, he whispered. His voice was thin, but it carried. Every day. And you never listened. Victoria's eyes snapped to him, sharp as razors. Children exaggerate, but Richard's gaze never left her. He's not exaggerating. And from now on, we're doing things differently. Later that night, Ethan crept down the hall, drawn by raised voices seeping through the walls. You're accusing me of sabotage? Victoria's voice was shrill, muffled but clear. I'm accusing you of betrayal, Richard answered, calm but unyielding. You've managed his treatments for years. If you knowingly ignored his pain, then you've been complicit in harming him. You don't understand. Victoria snapped. Appearances matter. Investors, partners, they see weakness in him. They see weakness in us. He had to appear fine, strong, even if Ethan froze, his small body trembling. Appearances. That was the word she cared about. Not pain, not truth. Image. His father's reply was steel. He's my son, Victoria. Not a prop, not a business card. If you put your pride above his health, then I need to know why. The next morning, Ethan sat in Richard's study, the leather chair swallowing his small frame. His father crouched in front of him, hands steady on his shoulders. Ethan, Richard said softly, I need you to tell me everything. Every time it hurt, every time you felt dizzy, every time something didn't feel right. Ethan's throat closed. But then he forced the words out, the tightness, the sharp aches, the strange taste in his drinks, the moments when his vision blurred. All the times Victoria said, be brave, stop complaining. By the end, his father's jaw was tight, his eyes dark with fury. Thank you, Richard said, voice low. You've been braver than all of us. Ethan swallowed hard. For once, his truth wasn't brushed aside. It was heard. At school, whispers followed him again. The tall boy and his crew circled at recess, their grins hungry. Look who thinks he can walk now, the boy sneered. Robot boy and his little maid. He jabbed a finger toward Zara. That she polishes your leg every morning. Ethan's chest burned. Normally he would have frozen. But today, Rose's voice echoed. Balance isn't just legs. It's heart and head too. He stepped forward, his voice shaking but strong. You don't get to talk about her like that, he said. She stood up for me when no one else would. That makes her braver than you'll ever be. Gasps rippled across the playground. The bully blinked, thrown off by the words. Zara's face lit up with pride. For once, Ethan wasn't the broken boy. He was the boy who fought back. That night, Rosa welcomed him and Zara into her trailer with steaming bowls of soup and the smell of cornbread. Richard joined them, shoulders hunched with the weight of decisions, but eyes softer than Ethan had seen in years. To the boy who learned to speak the truth, Rosa toasted. Lifting her glass of sweet tea, Ethan smiled shyly, clutching his toy wrench in one hand and a button Zara had pressed into his other for luck. For the first time, he felt like he wasn't fighting alone. The war had only just begun. But Ethan knew this much. The truth was finally on his side. The courthouse loomed like a stone giant, its marble columns towering over the crowd that gathered on the steps. Reporters clustered outside, cameras flashing, voices barking questions that blurred into static. Ethan clutched his father's hand, his prosthetic clicking on the steps, each sound magnified in the cavernous air. Zara and Rosa trailed behind, their presence steady anchors against the storm. Inside, the courtroom was hushed but tense, polished oak walls absorbing every word like a vault. The American flag hung behind the judge's bench, its fabric unmoving, watching. Richard sat at the plaintiff's table, sharp in his suit, jaw set like steel. Victoria, across the aisle, looked every bit the perfect stepmother, pearls gleaming, hair coiled flawless, smile sharpened into a blade. But Ethan could see it, the flicker in her eyes, the strain at the corners of her mouth. The proceedings began with voices droning, lawyers trading facts, arguments wrapped in ribbons of language. Ethan sat stiff, legs swinging above the polished floor, his chest a battlefield of fear and resolve. Then the judge turned toward him. "Ethan Williams, please come forward." His legs felt like stone, but Rose's voice whispered in his head, "Balance isn't just legs, it's heart and head too." Zara's hand squeezed his shoulder as he rose. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath. Ethan walked to the witness stand, each click of his prosthetic echoing louder than the last. He sat, small in the tall chair, but his chin lifted just enough to steady him. "Do you swear to tell the truth?" the bailiff asked. Ethan's voice trembled but held. "I do." At first, the questions were simple. His age, his school, his family. Then the lawyer leaned in. "Ethan, can you tell the court about your leg?" He swallowed, throat dry. "It hurts. All the time." I told Victoria, but she said it was normal. She told me to stop complaining." His eyes darted to her across the room. Her smile didn't waver, but her knuckles whitened around her handbag. "What happened when you met Zara Johnson?" "She looked at my leg. She said it wasn't fitted right. She showed me how to make it better. And it worked. I can walk easier now." The words rushed out, tumbling like stones breaking loose. He thought of the cafeteria, the playground, the bullies' laughter. He thought of Zara slamming her tray down, of Rosa adjusting his strap, of his father's hand steady on his shoulder. "I wasn't lying," he said, voice cracking but growing stronger. "It hurt. It always hurt. And nobody listened except them." He pointed toward Zara and Rosa, seated quietly in the benches. Gasps rippled through the room. Victoria's lawyer rose, smooth and oily. "Ethan, sweetheart, isn't it true that children sometimes exaggerate pain?" Ethan's small hands clenched in his lap. His voice rose, steadier now. "I'm not exaggerating. I'm telling the truth. And if I don't say it, then no one will know. And I don't want it to be quiet anymore." The courtroom was silent. Even the judge leaned forward, eyes softening. "Thank you, Ethan," the judge said gently. "That was very brave." When he returned to his seat, Richard squeezed his shoulder so tightly it almost hurt, but in the best way. Zara grinned from the bench, gap-toothed and radiant, and mouthed, "Two-person team." Rosa nodded solemnly, pride glowing in her eyes. Victoria's composure cracked at last. She leaned toward her lawyer, hissing words that didn't carry, her perfect mask slipping into something sharper, more desperate. Closing arguments thundered through the room. Richard rose, his voice firm, clear. "My son has suffered needlessly. Not because of fate, not because of limitation, but because the truth was ignored. He deserves honesty. He deserves care. He deserves a life without pain." The judge's gavel struck once. The sound rang like finality, effective immediately. "All medical authority over Ethan Williams is removed from Mrs. Victoria Williams. Custody remains with Richard Williams, with independent medical oversight." Victoria's chair scraped as she stood abruptly, her face pale beneath flawless makeup. "This is unfair," she snapped, voice cracking. "I did everything for him, everything." "Order," the judge barked, gavel striking again. "This case is closed." The room erupted in murmurs. Reporters scribbled furiously. Richard exhaled, relief softening his rigid shoulders. Ethan leaned against him, exhausted but weightless, as if the prosthetic had suddenly grown lighter. Outside, cameras flashed, questions flew like arrows, but Ethan barely heard them. He saw only Zara waiting at the steps, her grin wide, arms flung open. "You did it," she whispered when he reached her. "No," Ethan said, smiling for real this time. "We did." That night, back in Rose's trailer, the celebration was small but real: collard greens, cornbread, laughter bouncing off thin walls. Rosa raised a glass of sweet tea, voice warm. "To the boy who found his truth," she said. Ethan clutched the toy wrench in one hand, the lucky button in the other. For the first time, the pain didn't define him. The truth did. The Monday after the verdict, the air at school felt different. The sun stretched wide across the playground, But what really shone was Ethan's posture. He no longer carried his backpack like a shield. Today, he carried it like a normal kid slung loose, swinging against his side. Each step of his prosthetic clicked with new rhythm, adjusted by Dr. Hernandez, strengthened by Rosa's exercises. It didn't feel like a cage anymore. It felt like part of his fight. The bullies hadn't disappeared, but their power had. The tall boy swaggered over at recess, his grin thinner than before. "Think you're a hero now, robot boy, just wait. You'll mess up again." Ethan's chest tightened, but instead of shrinking, he turned to face him. "Maybe I will mess up," he said, his voice steady. "But I'll get back up. That makes me stronger than you." The crowd of kids around them murmured, surprised. Some even clapped. Zara, standing a few steps away, flashed a grin that could have lit the whole playground. For the first time, Ethan saw the bully blink, uncertain, before muttering and slinking back to his corner. That afternoon, Ethan tried something he'd never dared, running. At first it was awkward, his stride uneven, his arms flailing for balance. But Zara cheered, clapping loud enough for the whole playground to hear. "Go, Ethan, go." He pushed harder. The prosthetic clicked faster, his breath came in sharp bursts, but he didn't stop. When he finally skidded to a halt near the swings, laughter burst from his chest raw, unshaken. Triumphant, "I did it." He gasped, cheeks flushed. Kids clapped, some even cheered. The bullies didn't smirk this time. They just watched, shadows shrinking in the light of his small victory. That evening, the Williams estate felt less like a fortress and more like a home. Richard tucked Ethan into bed, smoothing the sheets like he had when Ethan was little. "Do you think she's really gone?" Ethan whispered, eyes wide in the dim light. Richard hesitated. "Victoria won't give up easily," he admitted. "But no matter what happens, you won't face her alone." "Not anymore." Ethan clutched his toy wrench in one hand and Zara's lucky button in the other. For once, the dark didn't feel like it was pressing in. It felt like space room for dreams. On Saturday, they gathered in Rosa's trailer again. The tiny space was alive, with warmth-collared greens simmering on the stove, cornbread steaming on the table, laughter spilling louder than the rain outside. Richard brought a cake, and Zara declared herself Ethan's official coach. Rosa raised a glass of sweet tea, her voice strong. "To the boy who spoke his truth," she said. "May he never forget it." They clinked glasses, laughter bouncing off thin walls. Ethan sat between Zara and Rosa, his chest swelling with a feeling he barely recognized: freedom. But even freedom carried shadows. As they stepped outside into the cool evening, Ethan glanced down the street. For a fleeting second, he thought he saw a familiar figure, Victoria's silhouette, standing still under a flickering streetlight, eyes watching. Then it was gone. His stomach knotted, but Zara slipped her hand into his. "Don't worry," she whispered. "We're still a team. 2-person, 3-person, whole team, whatever it takes." Ethan nodded, gripping her hand tighter. For the first time, he believed it. The future might still hold battles, but he wasn't fighting alone anymore. And as the night closed around them, the boy with one leg wasn't just surviving. He was running toward truth, toward freedom, toward a life no one could take away.